comedy, and combat sports, then we have the podcast for you because we cover that and much, much more.
Do you like to debate with your friends? Do we have the perfect segment for you? It's the 531, where we take any given subject, break it down to a top 5. From there, we debate it down to 3 and then into that number 1 spot.
If you want to get a hold of us, find us on our social medias. Search Working Fans Podcast on any major social media platform. And if you want to find the podcast, search for us on any major podcast platform as well as YouTube.
Working Fans Podcast. We put in the work so you don't have to.
Fans, welcome back to the Working Fans Podcast. This week, we are talking the Royal Rumble 1992. But before we get started, we are brought to you, as always, by Wrestleville. Vinny Berry over at Wrestleville has 2 books, the newest one being the Pro Wrestling Vault Volume 1, available at WrestleVille.com or LanceByChance.com. It's got 35 short stories from wrestlers across the U.S., NWA champions, NWA junior champions, tag champions, Hall of Famers, and as well as his first book, he also wrote Lance by Chance Wrestling Zavon Eric, available over at LanceByChance.com. And that was all a mouthful. We're going to bring in Dave, even though he's busy promoting this podcast.
I am sharing the shit out of this motherfucker.
And Dave, this week we are talking the Royal Rumble 92. We've got the iconic poster here. And before we jump into talking about the show, do you have any thoughts before we dive into it about it?
Yeah, well, one little fact, if we don't get to it, I thought was pretty cool. Ric Flair, known as the, he's the traveling world champion, right? But he's the Crockett's, he's the Carolina guy. Interesting to note, I found out just watching this, 2 of Ric Flair's most famous matches. Terry Funk, I Quit match, I'm a big fan of. Troy, New York. This match, one of his other great performances, Albany, New York. So it is kind of funny that the state of New York has 2 of his, I would consider 2 of his top performances of all time.
Yeah, and when I picked this because the 92 Rumble is big in everybody's minds, and I thought, I forgot, like I've seen it over the years and I just assumed the whole event was going to be good. Mm-hmm. And this is really only a 1-match show.
Yeah, I'd say for the most part, there was one other match I kind of liked, but yeah, we'll get to it.
All right, so we'll start it off. If you're looking for this on Peacock, it's season 5, episode 1. It's from the Knickerbocker Arena in Albany, New York. It starts with an intro video.
I love that fucking intro video. I don't want to cut you off, but that Vince McMahon with a Royal Rumble.
I wanted to get into talking about it because it's something that I don't feel they do nearly well enough anymore. And it's introducing the Royal Rumble, introducing the participants.
That fucking music.
Yep, we go right from this to Gorilla in the Brains starting to kind of preview the episode, and that this was hitting all the right spots as far as nostalgia for WWF. And it's everything I used to love about renting a WWF home video and being able to see this. And I mean, right off the bat, 1-2, where you got this video package hyping everything, and then you got the host hyping everything. And they do it a lot about this. You'll have a match, and then you'll have video packages that hype the next match. You get that match, and then more video packages that hype the match after that. And I'm just wondering how over the years they almost seem to have lost this.
Yeah, dude, I don't know, because I definitely the little things. We'll get to it later too, like even before the Rumble, where we have all the participants get those little pre-match interviews, and like you said, it was just a perfect hype formula. I think. God, I don't know. I guess when Vince was really doing commentary and he had that open, that first, point of view where he's right there. Like people used to say it, like it was kind of easy because you're working with the owner, so you know what he wants to get across, and that's not there anymore.
No, now the first match on this show is former guest to the show,
You bet your
one
ass.
half of the Orient Express. I hope to God he found his phone charger. Pat Tanaka versus
Yeah.
the new foundation of Owen Hart and Jim Neidhart. And this was, I thought, a good way to kick off the show. They
Yes.
did announce during this match that Jannetty and Brian Knobbs are out of the Rumble, and
Yes.
Nikolai Volkov and Haku are in. Now,
And more than
Jannetty is
that.
out of the Rumble because he went through the barbershop window,
Yes.
and that's been brought up a lot because it was right around this time. I forget how many years ago. Well, 92.
Yeah.
So fuck.
And what I liked about that too was Bobby Heenan even put over the substitutes, talking about it adds a different dynamic with the size of the Rumble, with Haku and I'm forgetting Volkov, being bigger guys, more bigger guys being hard to eliminate. I thought that was a nice little touch. One other thing, this was the only other match that I like you said, there was some weird, we're gonna get into it more matches, but interesting to note too, like they said, they kicked it off with a tag match. The year before, it was the Rockers versus the Orient Express, and that Orient Express was Pat Tanaka and Sada. So I think Sato was his name.
Sato.
Yeah. Whereas this one was Kato, which was Paul Diamond under a mask, and it was Bad Company in AWA. But it was interesting to note the Orient Express 2 years in a row in this position at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, 100%. Now, after this match over, the new foundation goes over. Alfred Hayes goes over the money Piper Bret Hart situation, which then leads to Sean Mooney backstage with the Mountie and Jimmy Hart.
Yes.
And after that, Gene Okerlund backstage with Roddy Piper. So, they're almost setting the table for the match in front of you. They're giving an interview with one of the participants, an interview with another one of the participants, and then the second match on the show, Roddy Piper versus the Mountie for the WWF Intercontinental Championship. This was such a big match because Piper is always known to be one of the greatest that didn't get a world title, but we actually saw him win a title here, and it was such a feel-good moment because the Mountie was so hated. He had that shock stick a lot around this time.
Yeah.
And anybody that's got like Jimmy Hart just yapping in your ear, I was so glad to see Piper win it. And I would argue this is not his best performance on the show.
No, not at all. But this was a good moment too. I forgot about this before we went over, but I did. It was some interesting stuff. Also some quotes here from Roddy Piper that Gene interviewed that were kind of interesting. Mountie says he's going to take my manhood. And Rowdy looks at the camera. I don't know what you're come here to do, but I come here to fight. And it was just a little bit of that homophobic type time, but it was interesting to see Rowdy with that trash talk. And then,
oh yeah, I would argue they've maybe never gotten away from that to some degree.
Yeah. Rowdy also said something to Mountie about this guy says he has dreams, and I say they're all wet.
I did pick up on that.
Yeah. And it was interesting, this 100, sorry guys, my nose is killing me, but that 104-degree fever thing that they gave for Bret as an out was always kind of strange to me as a kid, rather than doing like an injury angle or setting something up. I never quite got it because Bret was so light years better than Mountie in terms of booking and positioning. But it did set up.
He is also so concerned with how he looks on the card. I mean, I would argue maybe Jacques Rougeau would be as well. And maybe there's that Canadian rivalry between the Hart and the Rougeau families, even though they're in different provinces, because Rougeau obviously in Quebec with Bret Hart being out of Calgary.
Right. But I mean, it was a cool moment. It set up this cool moment with Roddy Piper winning the title from Mountie, and it would set Bret up taking the title and pinning Roddy Piper. And that was a rare pinfall loss for Piper. And that would happen later in the year at WrestleMania 8. But so this did set up a lot of stuff, and it was a really cool moment.
Yeah, now following this match, we went backstage with Lord Alfred Hayes. He was with Hulk Hogan. And I didn't write it down, but I believe this was a Coliseum video exclusive. There were two of them on this show that ended up on the Peacock Network. And when they talked to Hogan, watching it back now, I didn't look at the poster when I was putting this up, but I forgot Hogan was in this. And that is something wild to think that Hulk Hogan was in a Royal Rumble that another person would take the championship in. And we will get to more of that when we get to the Rumble, because there is other stuff to talk about, like Jesus Christ. Gene Okerlund was backstage with the Bushwhackers and Jameson.
Oh, God,
I remember Jameson vaguely. I didn't realize he sucked this bad.
Yeah, he did.
What the fuck was up with this guy? Do you know who he is?
I looked it up. Something, I could be wrong. Joe, maybe Domingo. He was apparently a comedian somewhere that Vince saw and took a liking to, and they offered him this gig.
Okay, because speaking of comedians, he makes me think of the modern comedian Neil Hamburger a little bit, but he's nowhere near as funny. Jameson fucking sucks. And that is really highlighted during the Beverly Brothers match with the Genius versus the Bushwhackers with Jameson. Now, if I'm not mistaken, was Wayne Bloom one of the Beverly Brothers? Let Dave talk here, folks. And that is Von Wagner's father, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Wayne Bloom is the he's the more fit one. He's not as thick.
Okay.
He has a scar on his face too.
Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because I could give a fuck about him. And this match was good enough for what it was. 92, I would have loved this.
Yeah.
2 days ago, I did not enjoy this as much. Jameson's chewing on his tie.
So hokey bullshit. Bobby Heenan has a couple funny lines there where he's just like when Genius smacked him, and Bobby's like, that brave man, even touching that man, you know, he's just little funny lines here like that. But Gorilla's trying to come to the aid of Jameson. I'm just like, Gorilla, don't. He's trash.
Bobby Heenan really put in work on this show, just going all out. Now, I'm amazed the Beverly Brothers won this match. That's about as much as we're going to talk about.
Dude, I just want to say one more thing about this, actually.
Oh, wow. Dave's going in on Jameson.
Former AWA World Tag Team Champions, the Beverly Brothers, were the Destruction Crew, taking on the former Mid-South UWF World Tag Team Champions, the Sheep Herders, only a few years ago.
I was thinking that watching this, how if you look at the Bushwhackers, they just look so goofy doing their thing in the ring.
Yeah.
But if you look at them, they're two solid built guys. And if you're aware of the Sheep Herders past, you realize how badasses these guys are. But that is not conveyed in this match. But following this match, Gene Okerlund is backstage with the Road Warriors, setting up the WWF Tag Team Championship match between the Natural Disasters and the Legion of Doom. Now,
Styles clash here.
I was excited for the match because you got the ass kickers in the Road Warriors, and you've just got the two behemoths in the Natural Disasters.
Yeah.
I had remember this wrong, because I remember the Natural Disasters being champions. I thought it happened here. When I saw the end, I was surprised, but it also made sense given a match for them, because the Natural Disasters, you couldn't put them clean over the Road Warriors. Or I keep calling them the Road Warriors, the Legion of Doom. Get your federations, right?
Yeah, right.
But it was still a hell of a match. I thought it was a good finish. And obviously they would probably end up running this back eventually.
Yeah, Road Warriors weren't too long for the company after this, I believe. I don't remember, but I don't even know if they made it to WrestleMania this year, WrestleMania 8. They might have already been gone, but it was shortly. Oh, they might have took time off, because they would come back for SummerSlam 92. That's when they found that stupid ventriloquist doll, Rocco. And they weren't long for that company after that, though, because that's when Hawk showed up all fucked up, like on the motorcycle or something at SummerSlam 92 in Wembley.
They've gone in and out of the company a couple times.
Yeah, a bit of a styles clash here. You're not going to throw the Natural Disasters around. Like, I mean, you can do some stuff with them, but I mean, that's the cool part about the Road Warriors match. It's just all the power shit they get to do. And you get very limited that here. So I thought it was a bit of disappointment, but I like you. I kind of understood the ending, and back then, especially on pay per view, it was very rare WWF would do a count out, so it didn't bother me as much back then. But yeah,
Yeah, almost
strange.
the rare dusty finish because you saw how the Natural Disasters got the win. Everybody got excited. But being a wrestling fan, I'm like, ooh, that was a count out. I'm like, and then when I saw that, I'm like, wow, that's really smart because that gives them the win and it almost gives them an argument to go on to the next one, which after this match, Sean Mooney is backstage with Jimmy
Yes.
Hart and the Natural Disasters. Jimmy's whining. The Natural Disasters are pissed off. I mean, following that, we go back out on the floor with Gorilla in the Brain. I
Yes.
did not take full notes for this, but I liked how like you'd go from like a backstage segment out to Gorilla in the
Right.
Brain that would talk for a little bit about it. And then they'd go backstage again with Gene Okerlund and Roddy Piper. Roddy
Right.
Piper on fire during this.
Yeah, talking about he has a dream. And what I like too at the very end, I don't know if you picked up on this, he says something that's like, ha, I'm gonna dedicate this one to Colt, which of course is his son, Colt Piper. So he kind of slipped that in by saying it fast, but I thought that was
Oh wow, I didn't notice that.
I
Now,
was glued to Piper for this one for some reason. I picked up on all this shit. I was like, oh, Rowdy is gold here.
Now, following this match, Sean Mooney was backstage with Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
Almost, I believe this is where they went over the barbershop window.
Okay.
Or they
Actually
might
don't
not
have
have.
this.
They at least talked to Shawn Michaels, and you can see he's got the start of confidence working with him, but
Right.
he's not like the final form of Shawn.
No, not at all.
And it's weird after so many years of seeing him on that top level to see him almost learning how to do that right now.
I have in mind like we're this about the time where we started to go down. We started to get word from some of the participants in the Rumble.
Yes, because after that was Alfred Hayes backstage with Ric Flair. Ric
Yes.
Flair doing as
Royal
always
Rumble
do.
exclusive. I mean Coliseum video exclusive because Rick actually reveals he got number 3 in this interview.
Oh, that's right. He does. Because the whole broadcast, Bobby Heenan is so concerned with where Ric Flair is going to be. And he reveals he's number 3. Now, following this, we have a set of Royal Rumble promos.
Yes. May I?
starting-
May I? Because I wrote it down. It wasn't actually the order. I want to read this in a specific way because I'd like the people to get this here. These were the people we heard from. Let's see who doesn't belong here. We got former world champion Randy Savage, future world champion Psycho Sid, Davey Boy Smith, a legend, main event in Wembley Stadium, Jake the Snake Roberts, legend, Ric Flair and Perfect, legends, Undertaker, future legend, Hulk Hogan, Repo Man.
Yeah, it was a weird like choice of people they brought out here.
Yeah. But it's cool. Like, I really like the fact that they did this. I like that we got words from everybody. It's just that everybody else kind of felt like a big deal. They could maybe win this, but Repo Man.
And following that, the 5th match on the show, I like these old pay-per-views. This thing was what, maybe 2 hours?
2 hours, I think, in 48 minutes.
Yep, but it didn't feel like it. 5 matches. The Royal Rumble's the 5th match.
Yes.
I'm going to go over the first 10 entrants.
Sure.
We'll talk a little bit about the Rumble and then move on to the next 10.
Yeah. I love this beginning with this for the record. I know we're going to talk about Davey Boy and like the $1 Million Man are going to kick this off. And I thought they were fantastic. Yep. But go ahead.
Oh. Yeah, we start off with the British Bulldog, Ted DiBiase. Ric Flair is 3rd. Jerry Saggs 4th. Haku is 5th. Shawn Michaels 6th. Tito Santana 7th. Barbarian 8th. Texas Tornado 9th. Repo Man 10th. That is not a bad list of names to start.
No, when you're looking at guys like Kerry Von Erich, a former NWA heavyweight champion, I think he already had the Intercontinental title at this point one time in WF.
He squares off with Flair almost immediately.
Dude, everybody squared off with Flair a little bit here. Like at some point, if you're coming down, everybody made sure they got to work with Ric Flair a little bit. It was almost like all these WWF guys were like, oh shit, we get to work with Rick.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring up the next 10 because while it was huge when the tornado tangled with him, like 11th was Greg Valentine. They had a chop off. 12th was Nikolai Volkov. 3rd was the big boss man. 14th, Hercules. 15th, Roddy Piper. And I thought when Piper and Flair touched in the ring, they went off.
Gold.
16th was Jake Roberts. 17th, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. 18th, IRS. 19th, Jimmy Snuka. 20th, Undertaker. Dave, tell us what you thought about Piper and Flair in the Rumble.
All right, Piper and Flair was gold. Even before that, couple of funny little notes here. Greg Valentine hooked the figure 4 on Ric Flair at one point here. A couple Carolina boys going at it. Ric Flair also was going to hook the figure 4 on somebody else at one point in this match too. This might be a record for most figure 4s ever put on in a Royal Rumble.
Definitely.
Boss Man looked great here as well. He was getting a huge reaction. And then Flair had got rid of him. And yes, the bell sounds and Rowdy Piper comes down, and it's just Flair and Piper. And this crowd's electric because Rowdy was so protected and was so over that you knew he was probably not going to win the Rumble, but you knew you felt like there was a chance. And you also felt like Rick would win. So this was just special because it was really cool to see these two guys who could win the world title at this time in the ring, and one of them wasn't Hulk Hogan. That's amazing for this time period.
Yeah, 100% now. The last 10 that entered this Rumble, Randy Savage, Berserker, Virgil, Colonel Mustafa, Rick the Model Martel. 26th was Hogan. 27th was Skinner. 28th was Sergeant Slaughter. 29th, Sid Justice. 30th was the Warlord.
Yeah.
Seeing Hogan get in there and square off with Flair, it wasn't wild in-ring action, but you knew it was a historical moment.
Yeah.
And the 92 Rumble, it was really highlighted by the Royal Rumble. Like, the show overall was good, but this is a classic Rumble.
Yeah, this was pretty crazy. Some interesting stuff here. Like Sergeant Slaughter, the year before, had won the WWF World Title from Ultimate Warrior and would headline WrestleMania 7. Here he was back as a babyface this year, but he felt like an afterthought. Like it wasn't a huge pop for him. He just didn't seem like it felt like his run was over there.
Yeah, it's like he had that star power shine and he still came in major. He hadn't completely passed it by.
Right.
But you knew that, like, to me, it felt like if you were to make him the champion, that would have felt like a year too late or like too late in his run. Flair, even though he was older, just felt like the perfect choice.
Yeah. No doubt. Flair was the perfect choice here. He put on the performance too. Like this is one of Flair's best performances. He's coming in at number 3 and he's fighting with everybody in this ring. It's nonstop. He sets the record for the longest time in there at the time. He wins the title. Some other funny interactions, I have to say. Sid, he does this throughout his career sometimes too. And people like it. He doesn't really get called out on it. It is kind of cool, but it's also kind of weird. Like, he's getting a babyface response, and Hogan, this was poorly booked. Like, Hogan did sneak up and try to actually get him out in the ring. But WWF's plan here was to have Sid the heel and Hogan the babyface. But not only do they execute this poorly, Sid feeds into the crowd. The crowd chants Sid, and Sid's like, yeah. And here's Hogan like, boo. And I'm like, this does not seem like what you're supposed to do in this role. You're supposed to not draw attention to that, but they did. And I thought it was pretty cool, but odd.
Maybe the only thing I could think of is maybe Sid just was fed up with Hogan being in that top spot. And it's like, if you can get that cheer, why not go for it?
Yeah.
That almost feels like that would be the response.
Yeah. I mean, and at the end of the day, too, I mean, this crowd, I think they wanted a Sid or a Flair or a Piper to win this thing. Hogan had his fans, but he definitely had people. He was starting to get what we would know years later as the John Cena, the Cody Rhodes treatment. He was starting to get that, like, we're tired of getting you shoved down our throats.
Yep. Now to finish this up, Mean Gene is backstage with Jack
Put that
Tunney
cigarette
presenting the title to Ric Flair, and with a tear in his eye, he accepted the world championship. Classic promo. Dave, now that we are finished up talking about the Rumble, Is there a particular favorite moment of yours on this show?
Oh man, this whole Royal Rumble match itself is just too good. I was just, I don't know. I love Flair and Davey Boy doing the classic, almost like Flair Luger typical big man spots where Davey's pressing him over his head. I thought it was a great performance by the Bulldog. He's underrated in this. Flair and Kerry Von Erich, like you said, that just felt special to me.
If
Flair
you
and
watch
Piper,
this match, every 5 minutes, Flair is on the verge of getting dumped out. And I
yeah,
mean, he is upside down in the ropes. We have a couple Flair flops.
yeah. To me, this is still one of my favorite Rumbles of all time. Maybe the best one. It's up there, still holds up. We just saw it. It's Flair's greatest, one of his greatest, one of. This is the guy who wrestled Steamboat the Classics. I'm not going to lose my head here, but this is one of the greatest performances Rick's ever had. And then he follows it up with that fantastic interview. That interview, the Rumble, those are my two favorite moments.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing for me. I like the whole Rumble performance, but that post-match interview where it feels like Flair really got to be himself in the WWF was amazing.
Yeah.
And guys, we just wanted to let you know I'm stepping in this week because our own AJ Strange Brew is under the weather. We got, what is it? It's now one half the Working Fans podcast has got the COVID. Me and Dave still going strong.
We're going strong, baby. I
But
got
guys,
something.
hopefully AJ will be well enough to be back next week, unless he's got that 80% blockage we're all worried about. But if not, we will see you next week and have a good one.
Doing this one for Colt.